Hello, everyone. And due to the phenomenal requests we've had for this is the part two to our interview with Tom from America. So, everybody who listened to the first podcast, say hello to Tom again. Hello, Tom.
Hey guys, how are you?
So, yeah, we've got tons of questions. This one is going to be a lot more structured than the last one. I promise that. I've
And I
got loads.
promise, I promise a bunch of people we wouldn't go 3 hours either, or you'll
No,
break it up.
no, we'll break it up. This isn't going to be that. But yeah, we've got loads of questions, loads of subjects. So, you ready to dive into this?
Let's get it done.
Get
This is
it
going to be
done.
fun.
Okay, so the first thing I want to talk to you about is how you first got involved working with the fairs and what was the first fair you actually worked with in America?
Yeah, I started actually when I was about 12 years old, growing up in Cleveland, Ohio. Our county fair was called the Cuyahoga County Fair, and it was a big to do thing. And one of my dad's friends was on the board for the fair, and he asked me at 12 years old if I wanted to earn some extra money and just work in the parking lot directing cars. And this was back in like 1982, 83. And I did it for a couple summers, had some fun, made a little money, got to go into the fair when my shift was over. And that's when I really got to meet some of the people that worked at the fair, worked the games, worked the rides, worked the food. And just when I was 15, somebody says, "Hey, would your parents allow you to come out for a summer or come out for a couple stops?" And I did, and ever since then, it was in my blood.
Say that last bit again, Tom.
Yep, it was in my blood.
Awesome. So, was that like a county travelling fair? That wasn't a permanent fair, was it?
No, it wasn't a permanent fair. Um, Once again, like we covered in our first part of our series, the state of Ohio has 88 county fairs, and this was just the county fair for the local area at the time. So that's what I did. I would work. I think the third year that I was at the fair, I didn't work in the parking lot anymore. I was about 15 years old, and I was taught how to work a game. And I worked a game called the Crossbow, which were the back of the trailer folded out, and there were some crossbow targets set up. And I think there were 8 guns total, or 8 crossbows, 4 on one side, 4 on the other. And I got to work with a guy who's a pretty interesting character. Um, his name was Beeko, Beeko, which there's a whole nother story about him that people want to hear the fun stories. But
Yeah.
he taught me everything, and like I said, it gets in your blood. It's a way of life. It's so much fun.
So, did you ever work out of state?
I never did work out of state, just for the time constraints that in the state of Ohio, like in the summers for college, when I would take off, I'd only have like 2.5 or 3 months.
Okay.
So I could only work a certain amount of fairs, and I usually stayed in state, still traveled a lot, but there's so much work to do in the state of Ohio.
Yeah. So, at 12 years old, you started, and then you worked up into this what we'd call in England the side stalls. In America, you call them the games. Games.
Yep. Yep.
So, what was a normal working day on the fairs when you worked them?
Um, Usually they were really long days. Um, Usually during the week we would open up. Like the county fairgrounds were always open really early because so much of it, like we spoke about before, had to do with agriculture,
Yeah.
showing of cows and chickens, and those people they actually lived on the fairgrounds while the fair was there, so they were up at 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. Um, Usually rides and games didn't open up till about 11 o'clock in the morning on the weekdays. On weekends it was 10 o'clock in the morning. And then like Monday through Thursday, we would close about 10 o'clock at night. And then Fridays and Saturdays, we would close around 11 o'clock. So you averaged 12 to 13, 14 hours a day.
Yeah.
But it
So,
never seemed like it was that long.
yeah. So you've worked on and off on the fairs on and off now for 30 years. Is it about 30 years, give or take?
Yeah, 35 years. Sure.
So what major changes have you seen in the fairs in America, working on the fairs, from when you started at a young age to how they are currently?
I think a lot of it is in the way of concepts of things, like the way rides are. They're a lot more fold out and go, instead of really having to set one up. Like over there, we were talking about the difference between a tilt-a-whirl ride
Yeah.
and like what do you guys call them? A waltzer over
We've
there.
got the waltzers, you've got the old
Yeah,
style, which are the build-up types, whereas now we have the fair trade ones, which literally fold off the back of a truck.
right. And that's something that we're also going to cover. And I was looking at the questions this morning, and people were asking different questions online.
Yeah.
And,
Uh,
and we'll hit those, but it's more about simplicity, because your routes are harder to run now. You may only have one day in between spots instead of 2 to 3.
yeah.
And there's a lot more load regulations too on the roads here in the States, unlike there is in England.
Yeah, I
You
know
know.
that there's a lot more, especially county to county, state to state.
Yep. But I never had a desire to leave the state. I think because I was destined to go to college, have a career. I could have if I wanted to, but I just never had a desire to.
Yeah. So, how do you think the general public in America's view of fun fairs has changed in the time you've worked on them? Have you seen a difference in attitudes to fairs and fair workers from when you started back 30 years ago to now?
I don't think there's been so much in the way of any change in the way that people that are looked at that work fairs. Um, but one of the big differences is, and I think Dave asked the question, is that the fairs over in England, there is so much pride. For this as a family, this is tradition. They've done this for years. They've gone with their grandparents, their great grandparents, now their
Yeah.
kids, and that. I think more in the States, it's just something to do.
Yeah. It's
You
more
know, you
just
drive
like
down.
a weekend out or a day out.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. And it's different. We get used to it, but like I said, there's so many things to do between little festivals. Like in the springtime and come the fall time, you may have like a 3-day festival. Um, like up on Lake Erie, they like to celebrate a fish called the walleye.
Yeah.
So they have a walleye fish festival for 3 days where an amusement company will bring their rides in and stuff like that. So it's a lot of different things. Church festivals, tons of church festivals, which are the big money makers for the church and the schools to run and operate on.
And do you think that fairs are viewed differently from state to state? Because America's such a huge country with so many diverse communities. Do you think the fairs are viewed differently from state to state?
I think they are. Um, and one of the reasons may be is they seem to celebrate food a lot.
Yeah.
When you get on the West Coast, a lot of the foods out there, California and stuff like that, Arizona, are very heavily favored towards the Latino community and the population. So you may have like a jalapeno festival or the chimichanga festival or something like that. So like on the East Coast, you have lobsters. So you may have a lobster festival or you may have a crayfish festival, which is, a giant shrimp. Um, and then in the Midwest, you have your normal everyday cattle fairs, that look at celebrating cattle and showmanship and stuff like that. So it just depends on where you're at in the country.
Okay. So in Ohio, let's talk about Ohio. at a standard fair, at a county fair, as opposed to a state fair, what are the different? What are the standard ride costs? What's the cost to say go on a standard ride at a county fair as opposed to a a state fair?
Sure. Depending on the days, because I have all different days and all different fairs are different. And I started to see this trend in the early 90s. Back in the day, when I got into the business, you used to have to buy tickets to go on rides.
Yeah,
And tickets were usually like a quarter a piece, and some rides may take 6 tickets or 7 tickets, whatever it is.
or
Um,
or two tokens.
you had 2 tokens. I didn't want to mention Dave this one because it'll make his head bigger, but that's all right. Um, but it seems like now a lot of your smaller county fairs, they're doing like what we call a POP or pay one price,
Yeah,
where you get into the fair for, let's say, $10. No matter who you are, whether you're a senior citizen over 55 or you're two and up, everybody pays $10 to get in. You don't have to have a ride wristband, but includes your ride times for all day. And then, if like some county fairs are free to get in,
yeah.
and you may just pay 12 or $13 for an all day ride wristband. On the real busy days, they may cut the days in half. So, say like from 10 a.m. till 5 p.m., um,
Yeah.
they'll have one wristband, and then after 6, because most of the fair companies give their workers an hour off between 5 and 6 for safety regulations,
Okay.
let them get a break and stuff. And then they may have an evening charge for $3 or $4 more.
See,
Now
that's
that's on the county fair level.
okay. What about
Now you
state
got
level?
state level. We're pretty lucky in the state of Ohio. The gate admission charge to get into the fair is not very expensive. It's like $6 a person. But as you know, $6 you can get away with doing a lot of stuff a lot
Yeah,
of days and seeing so many different things.
yeah.
Um, and then you can buy those tickets early before the state fair starts. And then you can buy wristbands really cheap for like $20 for all day, which is absolutely amazing. Because if you had to buy a ride ticket, they're usually $1 a piece, and you
Yeah.
could take up 6 or 7 tickets per ride.
Okay. So moving on to the state fair, because I've got a question about the state fair, and it kind of fits in with what you just said. And it's like you've kind of got to know now the UK fair enthusiast kind of groups and the UK fair enthusiast community over here.
Absolutely.
How do you think a UK fair enthusiast would view the Ohio State Fair, and what parts do you think somebody from the UK may find totally strange to be at an actual state fair?
I think what a UK vlogger, say like you guys that do the smaller fairs and then you do the hall fair and stuff, you'll find more that your local fairs that you drive to that may have 10 or 12 rides that may be set up for a week. Besides not having the animal exhibits like we do here, that would
Yeah,
pretty much be like your county fair.
yeah.
You look forward to it, the community looks forward to it. Um, and then the state fair, it's like I said, it's just that would be your large fair, your Winter Wonderland, your Hull Goose Fair, stuff like that.
But how, with all the foods there and the shows, and with things like the tractor pulls, the cattle pulls, and that, how do you think somebody who was used to UK fairs only would view that?
Well, see, that's one thing I haven't seen. Like when I've watched Winter Wonderland and the Goose Fair and the Hull Fair, I don't see like entertainment per se like we have here.
Uh,
Like, do they bring big name entertainment like Def Leppard or Motley Crue to a
no,
state fair?
no.
Yeah.
The nearest we have, in my experience, the nearest I've seen to a US state fair is probably the Bavarian Village at Winter Wonderland. But even
Okay.
then, you only get the small like German acts. We don't get the big acts. Like that's what I try to get across to people when they ask about the state fairs. When I say there's concerts and that, you have to try and get across to people. These are like top recording artists that turn up at these fairs.
Oh yeah, they're not really second rate or third rate. These are top touring acts that go.
Yeah, and I think that's the bit that would really, from my point of view, having been lucky enough to do both the Ohio State Fair and the UK, I think the fair side of it with a UK person would be fine. I think the rest of it would kind of blow their mind because it's so, what's the word I'm looking for? It's so American. It's so ingrained in America. You probably wouldn't see it anywhere else.
I think the UK bloggers for fun fairs, like you said, would just be standing around going, wow, really?
Yeah, I
I just,
genuinely think they do.
I paid $6 to get into this and I get to do this much.
Like, I mean, I remember the state fair at Ohio, and literally you could spend the day on the food stalls, the food competitions, the cooking competitions, and that alone would probably blow most people from the UK's minds because you literally can't picture it in your head until you've gone there.
Right. And that's why my friend Courtney and her family's amusement company and her food trailer and Jasmine's family and their companies and their food trailers, they
If
they
if
have these food trailers that you just go to these festivals and you may see, five or six nice food trailers out of 30. But then
um
when you go to a state fair, every single food trailer looks that nice or better.
yeah, absolutely. And actually, while we're on here, can we give a big shout out to Courtney's Pastry Pantry
Yep.
and and tell me if I get this wrong, Backer, who make the
Ot-
actual
yep.
little
Otterbacher.
bo-
Yep. There's Otterbacher Amusements. There's Otterbacher Trailer Manufacturers.
yeah,
And go
and
ahead.
if anybody gets the chance to look at these, like I mean, me and Tom have spoken. I'm about to bring this up because in the UK, a catering stall is normally just uh, plain white square, signs written on it with the prices. But do you want to explain to people what the catering stores are like in America, and if especially Courtney's, because that thing's stunning.
I'll tell you, and not being biased to Courtney and her family because I'm good friends with them, um, and I'm not trying to toot their own horns, but they are the type of people that set precedents for the industry in the state of Ohio. Their rides are beautiful, their game trailers are beautiful, their food trailers are exceptional.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and like you were saying, you may get a hot dog or a hamburger out of one food stand, and it's like we talked about it, that it was mainly for kids,
Yeah.
and the adults can get a tea or a coffee or a pop or soda, whatever you guys call it over there,
Yeah.
or my favorite, cock on a stick. But
Yeah.
yeah, I still laugh at that.
I think
But
everybody does.
yeah, but over here, all your trailers have something different. And the Americans are so crazy to try all these new foods that every year at a state fair there's always something new or two or three new items. Or we've done the donut hamburger. Well, they take two Krispy Kreme donuts, put it on a grill, warm it up, throw a hamburger with some cheese on it and onions and pickles, and there's your new sandwich.
Well, PT Vlogs would like it if it's got cheese on it.
He'll eat it, right?
He'd eat it. But yeah, like I say, what you're saying is absolutely true. Like I mean, I was gobsmacked the first time I saw Courtney's catering truck lit up at night. I mean, there's as much lighting and artwork on these trailers as there is the rides. Like I mean,
Yep.
it's almost like they're an integral part of the fair as well as the rides. Whereas over here, the catering stores are just something that's kind of stuck away in a corner for you to get something to eat or drink, but it's not really part of the fair, if you know what I mean.
I think if one of the big things, if you were to take a poll out of any, like if we were to set up a poll in my original Carnival Ride Pictures group, and you said what would be the main reason for you to go to, like, say, a county fair or state fair, and I would probably say 80 to 90% of people, the first thing they want to do is eat the carnival food
Yeah.
because there's just something about it that you don't get at an everyday American restaurant.
Yeah, that's very true. I can vouch for that.
And everything at a fair is deep fried, which we know deep fried everything just tastes amazing.
Well, like I say, the one thing I can literally remember to this day, and it's been 18 years since I went to the Ohio State Festival, it's the smell. It's like it's like a sensation that I've never, because there's so many different smells coming from each section. It's amazing.
Like you could just eat a giant piece of pizza and be full, walk 10 feet, and then all of a sudden you smell like a gyro,
Yeah,
which Jasmine family, they have the best gyros in the world. And next thing you know, that the fullness of your body that ate the pizza now wants a gyro. Then you walk by the French fry trailer and you want French fries. Then you walk by the funnel cake trailer. And next thing you know, you spent $40 on food. You feel like crap because you ate too much.
and then
But
go on a ride and throw it up.
yep, and then go back and do it all over again.
And the thing I have to make clear to anybody from the UK listening, when Tom says a slice of pizza, it's not like over here where you get a tiny slice of pizza. This thing
Oh
is
no, they're
almost the
huge.
length of your arm.
Yep.
You know,
And
you have to fold this thing up just to be able to hold it.
yep. And there's actual competitions. I know. I think the State Fair of Texas, one of the big, I don't know if it's the state of California State Fair or one of their, see, like California, and I put in a post today that one of the biggest county fairs in California closed. And I'm not trying to go off on it, but
Mm.
they closed for the reason that they have so many cases of COVID-19. They have so many people in the hospital and a lot more deaths compared to Ohio.
Yeah,
So that's why a lot of those big fairs are canceling. So far in the state of Ohio, no county fairs have canceled yet. There have been some springtime festivals that have canceled, which is sad.
yeah.
Um, but the county fairs are really trying to hold out as long as they can for tradition. It's amazing the tradition behind the county fairs.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a very similar feel here. Like, I mean, I think there's a general consensus here that the likes of Goose Fair and Hull Fair aren't going to go ahead, but they haven't officially announced it for the same reason. I think they'll try and leave it to the very last minute because if they can get them on, I'm sure they will. So I think that's a general feel across everywhere. To be honest, I think there's a lot of fear out there, and people. I think people really don't know what to do. Not wishing to go off the subject, but yeah,
I think if people just listen to their local government, like Ohio's starting to open up a little bit more now, which we're kind of happy for, and it's in baby steps. Starting on the 1st of May, you get a couple more stores that are open, little more stuff like that. But our governor, once he said, his wife and him and his families love the county fairs.
mm,
One of the big traditions is that the governor spends a couple days sleeping in the cattle barns at the state fair the first few days. I mean, that's tradition.
yeah.
That and they don't
So,
want to cancel that tradition.
see, of course, that's the big difference as well between the US and the UK. That everything over here is run from central government, so it covers the entire country. Whereas, and this probably affect, like we spoke before, affects the fairs in America. That each state has its own rules, and they'll probably have their rules on this. So that I think that's a big difference. Whereas over there, like you say, there's a potential that the fairs will open in Ohio, but it looks like they won't open in California. Whereas
Right,
over here, the likelihood is they just won't open anywhere.
right. And you see some of the big ones like we've posted in the room that like the Calgary Stampede, which does not happen for 6 more months, has
Yeah,
already canceled. Um, but
yeah,
going back to what I was saying is all these giant fairs, one of the biggest things they do with food is they have food competitions with the vendors
yeah.
to see who can come up with the greatest, newest food, and they win a prize for it. It's bragging rights, but if you get a hold of that bragging right, it will make you so much money that it's
Well,
scary.
I was going to say, I remember there being competitions when I was there. There was like chili making competitions and all sort, and the prizes weren't small prizes back then.
No, but I no. Well, that's among the people in the state. Like if you go to your county fair and let's say you bake a blueberry pie, then you and 87 other people, whoever won the blueberry pie contest in the state of Ohio, all bring a new pie down to the state fair, and then you can win a prize for having the best pie in the state of Ohio. And there's actually another funny story behind that. We'll get into it soon about my grandma doing it many years ago. But some of the weirdest food that I've ever seen at a county fair or a state fair,
Yeah.
besides the donut burgers, it's like a deep fried butter. And that just leaves you scratching your head because butter immediately melts when you put it in something hot or warm. How do you make deep fried butter?
And more to the point, who'd want to eat deep fried butter?
It's delicious.
Really?
Now, do you guys have Kool-Aid over there, the drink?
No, we don't have
All right.
Kool-Aid.
Okay, Kool-Aid is like a powdery substance you mix with water, and it's an American thing, but they have like deep fried Kool-Aid or deep
Wow.
fried soda pop or Coca-Cola deep fried.
See, if they had deep fried country time lemonade, there we're talking.
I'm sure they do somewhere. I'm
See,
definitely sure they do.
that's the kind of thing that doesn't happen here. There's another huge difference over here. Like I spoke to you the other night about it. The food in the UK fairs, it's getting better, but the staple is your basics of hot dogs, burgers. You get bacon rolls and fries, and that's
Could you
realistically about pretty much it.
could you imagine if I spent the money and I brought over a trailer like Courtney's over there, or if I bought over Jasmine's gyro trailer
You'd
or
clean
something
up.
that's real, you clean up.
You
They
really would
probably
clean
wouldn't
up.
allow you at the fair again.
Well, straight away, it would stand out so much from the others. People would be drawn to it just because of how it looks.
Right.
And once they were there, that'd be it. They'd have to try the stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's ironic at the UK fairs, you have stores with the USA flag all over it and like USA flags flying over it, and you'll go to the store and all they will sell is a hot dog and a burger, as if that's USA staple food.
Well, that's what it is.
Um, Not the way they cook them at these fairs, mate.
Yeah.
Not the way they cook them these fairs. They're all the same. But like I say, if Courtney or Jasmine brought their stuff to the UK, they would absolutely clean up. I have no doubt about that.
Yep. And it would cost a lot to bring something over like that.
It
But
really would.
and I would wish that maybe, and hopefully if there's a show owner that's listening to this podcast, come over
Yeah,
to America or research the trailer companies like Otterbacher Trailers. Make
absolutely.
the investment, spend $8,000-$10,000, get it shipped over to England, and have that standout food. Be that trendsetter. Offer them something than just normal crap.
To be honest, Tom, I genuinely think if they did that, it would become known across at least the across England. It would be known because it would be so different from the other stuff. And like I say, it would stand out. It'd be like having a small fair ride amongst the food stores because it'd be so bright and different. I think
Well,
they'd get their money back within 24 months easily.
Well, you look at the way like when Connor or Dave or Cy or Cooper and everybody goes out and they mention a ride, one of the things they say is, "Oh, that was a cracking ride because it's the fastest ride and I was looking forward to it."
Yeah,
Well, how about Carter Steam Fair comes along and you got the Carter Steam Fair food trailer, which offers you a neat mix of American type food like chicken wings or chicken strips or deep fried donuts or something to that's really weird, and you guys catch on to that, you're making a ton of money.
like I mean, I personally think if they brought funnel cakes over here, those would sell massively. I really do. I think every little kid that went to a fun fair that tried one of those would want one, without a doubt.
a funnel cake, an elephant ear, which is just really rolled out dough that's deep fried that has like cinnamon, powdered sugar on it. Um, we have like deep fried Oreo cookies, deep fried Twinkies. This is the type of stuff that you would buy out of Courtney's trailer because it's some kind of pastry. Um,
Absolutely.
you would have candy floss, or we call it cotton candy
Cotton
here.
candy, yeah.
Yep. Apples that have candy coatings or Oreos on it, stuff like that. People love that stuff.
Absolutely. And they'd love it over here too. Um, so next question for you.
Let's hit
As
it.
you've been following the vlogs and everything, what's the major difference from your point of view that you've seen between the US and the UK fairs and the rides?
I think a lot of it for the USA is simplicity, the ability to get a ride up and down and moved within as little amount as time to still
Yeah.
give you a good ride experience, and still be flashy. The UK, they do like their big flashy rides, like we always talk about, but you have your older traditional rides, like that whip ride that Carter Steam Fair has.
Yeah,
That
the whip is an amazing ride.
we haven't seen anything like that in the States since the '60s.
Yeah, I think one of the few places you can actually find a whip ride now is Kennywood.
Yep, I think Kennywood has one, and I think Knott's Berry Farm in California has a whip, and that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, like I say, we've got the one that travels, and you don't really see them anywhere else, and they are a really fantastic ride. If there's people listening that have never ridden the whip and you go to a fair and it's there, I highly recommend it.
I wish I was there riding one.
You may be soon, and we'll get onto
Yeah,
that.
yeah, we'll see that. But and a lot of things too once again it's tradition. You can Carter Steam Fair cannot add a new ride to their lineup in 30
No,
years, but you still get excited every time you see them.
it's because they're so different. They're different from anything else, even down to the smell of them. You can smell the axle grease, you can smell everything about them. It's just so different.
Right. To where in the States, it seems like every 2 years, an amusement company, like when they play a county fair, they may sign a 7-year agreement, let's say, and they want new rides every year. You don't want it to become stale.
But that kind of leads me into my next question, where I say, have the fairs in America are they becoming a lot more corporate and less family run as the years are going by?
No,
Whereas big companies are having to take like more and more fairs because of the demand for new rides constantly, and they're the only people who can really afford them.
not at all. That's actually something that's a lot more different than you would expect. Corporations don't want part of the traveling fairs. They
Hmm.
just want to do they just want to do the amusement parks.
Okay.
Um, for instance, there's a company that's called NAME, and it's like North American Amusement Company. And they travel the whole country in Canada. But they were actually started from a gentleman who used to be part of an American company. And then when that company, when the owner died, Jeff Pugh from Pugh Shows, great guy. His son
Yeah.
JD is still down in Florida, works the fairs. But the other gentleman started Name Amusements, and it grew so big, but it's still family owned. There's really, I don't think there's one corporation like a business model owned by a conglomerate of people that own amusement rides. It's all still family owned.
So do the family-owned fairs, like you say, sign up for the 7-year contracts? Do the fairs like commit to 7 years at say one place, or 7 years coming to a state fair,
I,
that kind of thing?
yeah, like for the Ohio State Fair, um, God, many years ago, back at the end of the '80s, they had, I forget what, I think there was 2 or 3 different amusement companies that would play it together. And then the company out of New Jersey came in, and I'm sure I'm not going to get this right, but there's somebody in the group that's part of the Ohio State Fair, and they'll tell me probably in a private message. But what they do is they go ahead and they'll sign like a 5-year deal and says, okay, this is how much we'll pay you, or this is how much you'll give us. Bring your rides in and we'll work on that. At any time we can terminate a contract or we can extend it. And they were here for like 15 years. Now, after that accident that we spoke about in the first vlog,
Yeah.
I think at that point it was time to really just go on to a different company, because it refreshed the minds of everybody in Ohio. And I don't even want to dwell on the accident whatsoever, but the company, I will give a major shout out to Tally Amusements out of Dallas, Texas, or Houston, Texas. They drove over like 1,300 miles, gave up so many county fairs, and they brought all their rides together to play the Ohio State Fair. And
So,
they're a beautiful company.
so with these contracts, do the fair companies or the families get paid a lump sum up front and then they get to keep their takings, or do they have to pay a commission for being at the fair? How does that
I
work?
I'm gonna answer you honestly and say I don't know. Now I know the one time or two times that I did work the state fair for somebody in games, they had to pay X amount of money for that game trailer to sit in that location for 14 days. And it's pretty damn expensive to do that.
Yeah, because I think that's how it works here in the UK. The families or the fairs actually buy a plot at the fair, and then they make their money from what they take at the fair.
Right. Yeah, once they've paid their money, like for instance, I think the one game trailer I worked in was like a 32-foot trailer that could be workable, which means is the front counter, which was split into two different games, was 32 feet. So you had 16 feet for one game. I think there was a small basketball game they call mini balls here. And then I was on the other side with the star dart, where you throw the dart at the star.
Yeah.
So that trailer at 32 feet may be charged $400 a foot. So you figure $400 a foot by 32 feet. That's $10,000 to park that trailer there for 14 days.
Yeah, I think that's how it's done over here. Like, I mean, I know with Winter Wonderland, they have to agree a space. And I know with Winter Wonderland that they do contracts, but it's year by year. They normally send the contracts out in March. So they
Right.
don't actually give anybody any kind of long-term contract. So that's why the big fairs over here can change year in, year out.
And I think one of the things that you also asked me about is what's the difference between the fairs. There seems to be a lot of independent guys, like when you go to those big fairs like Hull Fair and Winter Wonderland.
Yeah,
There's
there is.
so many different independent ride people. I think from the way that I see it, they probably pay whoever's in charge of that fair X amount of money for that ride to sit there,
Yeah,
because they collect all their own money at their own rides.
yeah. Normally, what you get is I'd imagine with Hull is the same as Nottingham. The actual Nottingham Goose Fair is run by Nottingham Council, I do
Okay.
believe. And so, if you want to put your rides there, you pay for your plot to Nottingham County Council, and you hire that plot for the time that the fair's there.
And
And
then
then
you get to keep the money that your ride makes.
exactly, you make the money on what your ride takes in. So, your income is solely down to how successful your ride is at that time.
Right.
So they don't actually get paid anything up front to go there. They actually have to pay, and it's normally to the councils because Nottingham Goose Fairs run on council property. Hands up, I don't actually know about Hull, but I'd be very surprised if it's any different.
Now, in America, say like at your county fairs, since you basically have one family that owns all the rides that go in there, they just have their normal ticket booths where you could either buy single ride tickets if you only don't want to go on rides all day, or you might get sick on them and you want to ride two of them. You can buy the individual ride tickets, or once again, you could buy the wristbands for all days.
Okay.
And that's kind of like the same way at the state fair too. I don't know what type of payment. I mean, I know the payment system is you could buy a a pay one price ticket, ride all day for a price. But
Yeah.
since there are a couple independents, I don't know if the independents, I think, just get paid X amount of money for being there the whole time from the other ride company that brought them in, but I'm not sure.
Okay. So my next question, or the next thing I want to talk about, is it's about how the general public in America. How do you think the general public in the States view UK fairs, and more in particular UK fair channels like on YouTube? How do people in the USA view them?
This
Do
is
they?
a really this question for me is different. I think this was Dave's question, and the way he worded it, kind of, I said I'll answer it on the vlog.
No, we'll
Um,
get to that. That question's
oh,
coming.
oh, that's not this question.
That's not this
Um,
question. This is how, say you take your standard person who visits the Ohio County Fair once, and then they go home,
okay.
put on YouTube, and they see all these UK fairs by UK vloggers. How would they view people having UK fair channels? Because
Well,
I'd imagine they'd find it slightly strange.
well, as you've mentioned before, and a lot of the people that are listening know, is you have very few people in the States that vlog any fair. And if they do, there's not really much talking. They're just showing the rides.
Yeah,
There's there's not that social interaction like Dave and Cy or you and the boys or you know Connor or anybody. There's not that type of interaction. Here it's just like let's show where I was and what I was doing, kind of almost like a family vacation video.
yeah. The only one I've really been able to find is Coaster Bob 62, and that's very. You just pretty much describe very much how his vlogs are. It's video without any, like you say, there's no interaction. It's just video of the fair.
Right. I mean, he may go on a couple rides, maybe like a roller coaster, but that's it.
Yeah.
But if you watch Coaster Bob, he also does amusement parks. So he's not really set into doing any type of um, specific type of things.
So how do you think that people viewing in the US would view the UK vlogs with somebody walking around talking to you through the camera, talking about the rides and that? How do you think people, your general public or your fair people would take those vlogs? Do you think they'd find them interesting, or would they just find them very strange?
I think they find him really interesting because when I started to rebuild this group, and I was really lucky enough to early enough before I even started the group, I caught on to watching Dave and Cy and Connor and Cooper, and it really caught my attention. And then when I started my Facebook group, I started promoting their videos because everybody, no matter what part of the world you live on, always wants to know what's the other half of the world look like, or what are they doing, or what's different. And I really kept track of, as you know, having your own page. When you post something on the page, like say if I post one of Dave's vlogs where him and Cy were really funny, I would notice how many times that video was viewed. So if and I at the time before this giant explosion, which I want to say thank you to everybody for joining my page. If I had 75 members and I had 69 people look at that vlog that they did, that
Yeah.
would show me that there's an interest in what's going on, or maybe people want to see what's it like over there.
Yeah. Cool.
And it's just like here, you post pictures of food trailers or rides that people have never seen in Europe or the UK, and you see them over here, and you see how many hits that picture has, and you see who's had it and where they're from, and you're like, oh, okay, wow. So they really do have that interest. So that's the big difference.
Okay. So going back to when you worked the fairs, what was your preference? Did you prefer to work the state fair, which was a big one-off occasion, or did you prefer to work the small county fairs?
It depended and like I when you work for somebody out in the fairs, you're very loyal to that person. There's a lot of like unwritten rules in the fairs back in the old days, and it was just common courtesy. You know, if you went to work for one guy for the year, you didn't quit and go to work for somebody else. That was kind of an unwritten rule, because if you did that and both people traveled together, you got what they call DQ'd or disqualified from working the rest of the year, because it's kind of like a competition thing. You
Yeah.
know, if I was working really good in games and making a lot of money, and nobody's really in competition with each other because we're all friends at the end of the day. Excuse me. But say, you know, another amusement company's games were in at one of our fairs, and the guy who won those games says, well, you know, Tom, if you come work for me, I'll pay you a better percentage of what you're getting with so and so. And if you did that, now you just cost the other guy money because he was paying you an amount of money, and now he's going to lose that.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like an unwritten rule that you never did that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Right. I was
And
going to ask my next question, but my next question will blend in with some of the questions that I've had sent in. So the first question is from James Page. Hi, James. Thanks for sending the
hi,
question in.
James. Thanks for asking questions.
And the question is, how many KMG inversions does the USA have?
At this time, and I kind of looked this up just to see, because, like I said, you know, I get out of Ohio, but I don't spend a lot of time watching other videos from outside of Ohio.
Yeah.
There are a lot running around the states, but the exact number I don't know, because once I looked up KMG, in the American's mind, when you say KMG and he gave a specific ride, we look at it as KMG as a whole, any type of swing ride. So with that, I can maybe say I'm going to guesstimate maybe there's 50 type fireball type rides running across the country somewhere.
Yeah. So that's
Um,
that's quite a few then, really.
yeah, I think if you want to talk about something like an XXL, which is a multi-trailer conglomerate of a ride,
Yeah.
maybe there may be only 4 of those in the whole United States.
Well, there's not many of those in the UK, to be honest.
Right. But once
So,
again, this all goes down to the amount of weight that each trailer is that carries that ride, because our load limits are so strict.
yeah.
I remember like the Orbiter, and you guys have that ride over there, or we had it
Yeah.
here called we called it the Predator. That ride was so heavy. I remember when it first came to a show that I was working at here in the States, they actually had to only move that ride at nighttime on the back roads, not even on the freeways, to go from city to city so it didn't break the laws. And this is weird, or they couldn't get permits for it on the freeways.
That's something that your average person and myself you it's something that you don't think about, that the fairs and the showmen have to deal with, because we have the weight limits over here, but I think they're slightly higher here than in the States, and they're a set number. Whereas, like I said before, in America, it goes from state to state. So that wouldn't even cross our minds. But like you say,
I mean, and I think that's where the geeky part of somebody that loves fun fairs and loves rides, like a Cooper and I and some other people would know, is like, oh, you can't take that ride on a main road because that ride may weigh, 80,000 pounds or 100,000 pounds on one trailer, and you can't move it on a main road. So
uh,
your average trip, let's say, I know there was one trip, the fair before the Cuyahoga County Fair. Cuyahoga County is up in Cleveland, where Cleveland is. The ride would come up from around the Dayton, Ohio area. So if you made that trip from Dayton through Columbus up to Cleveland, pulling a ride like that's about 5 hours, normally on a freeway. But since you have to go the back way through all these towns and back roads, it was 12, 13, 14 hours to get the ride to where it needed to go.
yeah, and I've driven some of the back roads in Ohio and heading up to Cleveland, and I wouldn't want
They're
to drive a
gorgeous.
huge I wouldn't want to drive a huge 18 wheeler down them.
Yeah, with a 100,000 pound ride on your back.
You'd have to see the roads, and bear in mind that Ohio and that area is the Appalachian Mountains, so these aren't flat roads either.
Right.
So yeah.
So that was his question that I answered, and I just don't have an exact number.
So just a little addition to that question, what would you say was the biggest ride manufacturer in America?
Most of the rides that I know of is by Chance, Chance.
Okay.
They make but there's a lot of new ride manufacturers that are just flying up the charts. In Ohio, you have a company called ARM, ARM, which they make some great rides. You can look them up, Google ARM USA, and they were started by two brothers who own a company called Bates Brothers Amusements out of Wintersville, Ohio. And then the one brother, I don't know what happened, they got in a fight or something, and he started building rides. And he does some drop towers and he does some kiddie rides and stuff like that. So they're really up and comers. But Chance was one of your big ride manufacturers. They had the Zipper. If we want to go back, they do a lot of merry-go-rounds. They do the toboggan ride that Dave loves and I love.
Yeah.
But you can just look up the history of Chance rides. They do beautiful bumper cars. And that's another thing I'm going to go off to the side on. When you ask me another difference between amusement companies in the USA and the UK, the one thing I can't stop looking at is, like, if I look at a ride, say like a Music Express or a New York, New York,
Yeah.
and I see how fast they run those rides.
Yeah.
It just boggles my mind in the UK, because in the USA, they would never run them that fast.
Yeah, a lot of the rides in the UK are run at their max.
Right. Which is a lot of wear and tear and a lot of maintenance. And that's not easy to keep up on.
It really isn't, but that's where the skill comes in. Like, I mean, if you're talking about Cy Abbott's New York, he runs that full out, but the maintenance on it keeps it going. And like, I mean, these aren't new rides. Like, I mean, they're old rides. Like, I mean, if you look at something like Atmosphere Creator, that ride's nearly 70 years old.
Right.
But you look at it and it looks like it was brought last month.
Right. I didn't mean to switch off onto another part of the vlog. That's just my ADD kicking in, because when you always talk about one thing, then you can do a subset of another part of a question that we didn't get to.
We're all about tangents here. It's okay. Okay, the next question is from Mr. Dave Stratton from Slothy Vlogs himself.
Do I have to answer it, really?
No, Dave's question is quite a relevant one, actually, and it is a very good question. And his question is, in the UK, adults at fairs, when they go to fairs on their own, they're kind of looked down upon. If you go to a fair as an adult without children or on your own, you do get looked down upon, not only by the general public, but you can also be looked down upon by your own friends and family. People kind of seem to think that only parents with kids or potential predators of kids go to fairs alone. How is that viewed in America?
I think, in this really, I've heard this from a lot of people, and that's a great question, Dave. Thanks for submitting it. And I know we've kind of had a jiggle about this in the talking in the chat rooms, like when you're live or Dave's live. After 9/11 here in the States, people became a lot more protective of their kids, their environment, and anything around them. Because you got to remember, back 20 years ago when this accident happened, or when we got terrorized, cell phones still were not that big of a part of our lives. And now you have this ability to put this device in your hand that's like a little square, like Dave's Pocket Pro or ProGo or GoPro. And people will always think the worst, probably over in England, because you're a lot more protective of your kids or your environment, and and that's completely understandable. In the States, we are so used to having cameras in our faces, people taking selfies or movies or TikToks or whatever you want to call it, that I don't think really bothers us as much. Now, if you're standing alone, say at a state fair where the whole kiddie section is by itself and you don't have any kids and people are watching you and you're just filming something or looking suspicious, it's going to happen.
Yeah. I think what happened over here was, I think a few years ago we went through a period where a lot of, for want of a better description, formerly well-loved children entertainers and that suddenly turned up being raving paedophiles,
Okay.
and it kind of turned the attention to anybody slightly off the norm or what the general public would class as the norm. And all of a
Right.
sudden, if you went to a fair with a camera, you went from just being somebody with a camera to potentially somebody who was filming the kids. And the stigma carried across, and it still does to a degree. Um, I'm lucky I don't have that problem because I go to the fairs with my boys, so I've never had this issue. But I know that Dave's had the problem when he's gone to a fair without the kids on his own. He's had people phone the police on him because of it. And
Yeah, and and I think you can't blame the people, but like you said, when you're in good with the guys who own the rides, and this is where the people need to get out and talk to the guys who run the rides, guys who own the rides, people that work in the food stands, people that work in the games or whatever. You get to know those people because those people will always back you up and say, "Oh, that's Dave from Slothy Vlogs. He has 100,000 people that follow him on YouTube. Oh, okay, then we know he's all right." And and
yeah,
and and I think that's where um, and maybe this may be a suggestion for Dave in the long run. Instead of just showing up, even though you know all these people, contact the guy or somebody at that amusement company and say, "Hey, I just want to let you know I'm coming in today and I'm going to film your fair."
yeah. I think
So
the
that
point
way, that go
I
ahead.
think the point you made that cameras are a far more acceptable thing in America. Like, I mean, I know that from being there. If you walk around anywhere in America with a GoPro or a camera or something like that, it's far more the norm over there in America than it is here in the UK. It's almost like the American general public are so much more used to having cameras
Sorry about that.
pointed at them.
That horn in the background. On Wednesdays they test the tornado warnings at noon, so I forgot about that. But one of the big things though too is, and you've been here, is that you will see that. Sorry. Okay. Um,
That's cool.
tornado. Oh, that's
In the
well.
fucking,
You've
in
been
the
here.
cellar, in
You
the
know that.
cellar.
Yeah, they still do that. You know it. Um, but one of the big things I've noticed in the vlogs, and since you've been in Ohio, you can testify to this. When you go to that state fair, one
Mm,
of the big things is that the Ohio State Police, the Highway Patrol, their training facility is on the Ohio State Fairground.
yeah,
So there are so many people and so many policemen and cadets and stuff that are at the state fairs, and so many that are at the county fairs, your local police or your sheriff. I have to tell you, Craig, I have never, ever in my life seen any type of law enforcement from England unless it was at like a hall fair or one of the big ones. I've never seen them at the small fairs.
yeah. So I'm just laughing. Only I could record a podcast during a tornado. Um,
Yeah.
now, that funny enough, you'd say that that's a big difference because over here, a lot of the big fairs they have private security. They don't actually have the police. Like the state fair, you have the state police and everything that patrol it and look after it. Whereas over here, it's more hired security, not the police.
But what is that higher security really going to do, though? That's the thing for me I don't understand.
A lot of the time, they just throw the people at the fairs, or if it's really bad, they'll hold them and they'll call the police in.
Right.
Realistically, they're there as a deterrent. They don't actually have any powers to do anything within reason. They're a bit like bouncers at a bar. It's only really at the big fairs where there's bars and stuff, because obviously once you introduce alcohol into it, it kind of changes a little bit. But like I say, I think the big thing is that people are used to the cameras. So hopefully that's answered that question for Dave. His second question is, Is there such a thing as a fair community in the States like they have over in the UK where you get groups of enthusiasts?
I'm going to tell you there's not. Um, and you could type in U.S. fair vloggers or U.S. Amusement park vloggers, and for some reason, I think people are more have a tendency to do the amusement parks than anything. I
Yeah.
don't know why that is. I mean, the traditions and the history and the upbringing, I think of the people on the American side to the UK side is completely different.
Yeah, I totally agree. Um, Everybody I've seen in America, realistically, they're more about theme parks than they are fun fairs. But that's because, you have so many theme parks, especially down that East Coast. So I'd imagine the majority of the enthusiasts are theme park enthusiasts and not fun fair enthusiasts. Would that be fair to say?
I mean, you have that like what is that theme park something? The one guy that travels all over the world, and basically all he really does is roller coasters.
Theme park worldwide.
Yeah, and all he does is go wee, which is so annoying.
He does go out for a cycle ride on his electric bike.
Well, I don't ever want to watch enough of his videos to actually see that, but um, and I think that's somebody asked me why do you want to do the American fairs? Why did you want to say trips with Tom or trips with Jasmine and Tom or fun fair vlogs with Tom? Because nobody else is doing it, and there was a demand for it.
Well, yeah, absolutely. The demand for it is over in the UK. It really is. And like you say, nobody is doing it. So, like, I mean, me personally, I think it's great that somebody's going to go and do in-depth stuff on the US fairs.
But I think now that we are doing it, I think it's going to be a really good thing.
I think so. I really do. But right then, Dave's next question, I think you've already answered. His next question was, is there a lot of rivalry between the theme park enthusiasts and fun fair enthusiasts in America? Well, there's not going to be any rivalry because there's no fun fair enthusiasts. So,
You know what? And I think that was brought up in chat the other day, between like Andy saying he gets coaster cred
yeah,
and all this crap. And I just go, what are you buying with coaster cred? What does it give you?
they are rubbing their egos. That's all it is. It means nothing.
But it's funny because here in the States, if you get an adult jumping on a Go Gator or a Wacky Worm and you have no kids on it, then you get looked at really funny by the adults going, okay, why is that person on that ride when it's for kids?
Yeah, you get that over here as well. Um, in fact, if you do that over here, you end up on YouTube having the piss took out of you.
That's
And,
hilarious.
and quite rightfully too. So the next question I have is from a young man called George Cobley.
Hi, George.
And his question is, how many fairs in total have you been to in Ohio?
I can honestly say I have been to every county fair in the state of Ohio, which is all 88 counties, which Ohio's a pretty damn big county. Now, I haven't done them all, or state. I haven't done them all in 1 year. Um, but at some of your points, like from Cincinnati all the way up to Northeast Ohio, it could be a 5 to 5.5 hour ride. That's time difference.
Yeah.
But I'm lucky enough. I would probably say hundreds if you include all the different festivals. Um, if you want to maybe go in like a 2 or 3 state radius, I could go 4 or 500. If you
So,
say the whole USA, I'd probably say 500 plus.
so lots.
It's a lot, but it's fun.
Well, yeah, exactly. I think once again it goes back to the old thing with America of it's so vast. Um, it's not like the UK where you can effectively travel the full length of the UK in, I don't know, let's say 14 hours from the most northern fair to the most southern. 14 hours, you'd be lucky to get across some states in America. So
Oh yeah, 14 hours doesn't get you very far.
So I hope that answers your question, George. The next question is from Paul on from PT Vlogs UK.
Oh, I love Paul. Hi, Paul.
And the question is, what is your favorite coastal fare in the USA?
What does he mean by coastal fare? Does he mean like going to the coast of America and actually going to a theme park?
No, a fare at the coast. You know, do they have fairs on the coast? In the UK, we have fairs all dotted all around the coast of the UK. So
Yeah, the only one that I've been to that has actually been on a coast was down in Miami around Key West, around the Keys. It's
yeah,
called the South Florida Fair, and I did that probably about 20 years ago. And that is really,
have you not been to Coney Island?
but that's not a fair, that's an amusement park.
You see, in the UK, Coney Island would be classed as a fair.
Okay.
It would be classed as a coastal fair, even though you've got Cyclone and that other coaster there that I can't remember. The majority of those rides that would be classed as a coastal fair, even though in America you class it as an amusement park because it's all down the boardwalk and it's all just walking, isn't it? So that would be classed as a fair in the UK.
Okay.
Similar to
Well,
Adventure Island in Southend. Now they've got a roller coaster, but that is classed realistically as a fair.
so if we want to go by British terms, if we do coastal fairs, I would have to say the pavilion at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Yes, been there. It's brilliant.
And I'm gonna put two words together: coastal, meaning it's on the coast of America, on the ocean, and then fair, I'll say it as amusement park.
Okay.
And then if we go back to the time thing, the time distance driving from Ohio to Myrtle Beach is 14 hours.
Yeah, I've actually been to that fair because believe it or not, I had my honeymoon at Myrtle Beach,
Oh, it's
and
beautiful.
it is a stunning, stunning place. I can't. It's become very built up since I was there last, but Myrtle Beach was brilliant, and I actually, like I say, I've actually visited that fair, so that's that's one I can mark off my list.
Great. I think he had a couple other questions, didn't he?
His second question was, when do you plan to visit fairs in the UK?
Let's figure out, and like you and I have talked, I've been looking at coming over for Winter Wonderland. Um, Hopefully I can get Jasmine to join me
Yep.
and maybe bring her son or daughter with her and taking in a week. I know Connor has really just offered his driving experience around London, so I would never have to rent a car. Um, and then he said, he would drive me out to like where you live, which isn't too far from him, or where Dave is at. And, if we get to meet everybody, or we could meet at Winter Wonderland, just to meet everybody and shoot some vid together. And
We'd all head south down to London and meet you down
of
there.
course, I'm coming. You gotta come to me.
All we've got to hope now is that it's on.
Yeah. And that's what I was trying to say is, I told you I
Yeah.
was looking at airfare and how cheap it was.
Yeah.
But the day that I find out that they say Winter Wonderland's on, I'm booking my airfare because after that, I think the price will just go up.
Okay, Paul, I hope that answers your questions because his other one was about food, and I don't really want to talk about food. Um, the
Oh,
next
why not? Go for it. What the hell?
because
Do
it was
it.
about his breakfasts, and nobody wants to know about Paul's
Oh,
breakfast.
let's cover it real quick.
Okay,
I can sum it up in all words.
go on
Don't
then.
ever eat Dave Stratton's breakfast. The
There
end of
you go.
story.
Good job. Uh, next question I've got is from Dave Newbiggin,
Hi,
uh,
Dave.
and his question is, "What is your favorite ride in the USA?"
Well, we kind of covered that on the first vlog. Um, and there's only a couple of them in the United States. One, I think there's one or two portables still around, and then there's just one park model.
This
And
wouldn't have
that would be
wouldn't have a
the
Huss,
Bear on Curve.
and say it wouldn't have a Huss motor on it, would it, by any chance?
There definitely would have a Huss motor.
Yeah, that's not a Huss ride. Didn't say it was a Huss ride. I said it was a Huss motor.
It's a damn Schwarzkopf ride, as Connor would say, or not Connor, but Cooper would say. I don't approve. But then when I fired back and said that they were rebuilt with Huss motors because of the strength and durability, he's like,
Yep.
"Oh, okay, I didn't know that."
Huss did the rebuild on them all, especially that one at Kennywood.
Oh God! But see, if you look at the one at Kennywood, like you and I have saw the videos before,
Yeah.
they don't have a lot. And this is the one thing again with the American type of rides. They don't have all the extra lights or
Or
scenery or
anything.
features
It's
that
very
you would even
basic.
find. Yeah, that you would even find on a portable model.
Yeah, it is very basic. The other thing it hasn't got is the big water pool in the middle to balance it up.
Yeah,
But
and
that
see,
said, if anybody hasn't seen it, I strongly suggest, and I will put a link in the description, go onto YouTube and see this ride actually going, because this thing pulls ass. This thing goes.
I think the one thing people have to remember is the circumference of this ride is not very large. And each ride, I think there's 20 or 21 cars on it, and they're all usually like a wintertime theme. But that ride, first of all, what's really cool about it, and that a lot of the people that love that ride, is the sound of the motors as it's getting wound up to go faster.
Yeah,
You
it
you
does.
you definitely hear that, and it's addicting, and it's twice as loud on the ride. Then when you reach top speed, they toot those train horns and about makes you fly out the damn seat. But that ride has, I think it's around 55 or 60 miles per hour top speed.
The forces you get on that ride at top speed when the horns go in and those motors are full out
It's
would be
ridiculous.
really good. Like, I mean, it's a fantastic ride to look at. I'd love to go on it because actually I'd imagine the ride experience on it would be rough as old nails, but it'd be so good.
But see, that's where you go back and you see that a UK amusement company or family fun fair would move that ride,
Yeah,
but very, very few American rides, like we were talking about before, we call them majors if it's a ride that has three or four trailers, and then anything over four trailers is set up, we call spectaculars.
yeah.
Um, any ride like that that's five trailers or more, including scene. I mean, I think one trailer is just for the scenery, one trailer is for the back decking. They don't want to spend 2 days putting up that ride. They don't usually have that amount of time.
No,
So
the gap between US fairs seems to be a lot shorter than some of the UK ones.
right, and we covered that on the first vlog, and anybody, if you didn't really listen to the first vlog,
Go and listen to it.
yeah, it's long. Split it up into 3 1 hour increments. You really will learn a lot. And thank you for everybody for the great comments. I think we surpassed 200 listens on YouTube, which for
Yep,
me, first one I ever did. Thank you.
yep. So my next question is from Connor, and his question is: on the videos of the Ohio State Fair, there's a central ski lift type uh, cable car straight down the middle. His question is that a permanent cable car or is that just put up for the fair?
Now, this is a weird question because at the Ohio State Fair, that is a permanent fixture that is there all year round, and it only operates during the state fair. Now, the funny part is that, and you've been to the state fair, so you know how long that thing is.
Yeah.
But when you enter in the one part of the state fair, it literally travels all the way down to the other part of the state fair.
I remember I remember if you're going to go on it, you probably want to put about 20 minutes to one side.
Yeah. Um, that the way that I try to tell people how big is the fairgrounds. If you start at one end of the fairgrounds and it's a certain exit off the freeway, I think the street is called North Broadway. Then the fairgrounds, it goes North Broadway is one exit, then the next exit is 17th Avenue, then the next exit is 11th Avenue. Each one of those exit is a mile in between. So I know it's hard to say British wise, you could probably do the math for him, but it's 3 miles long. So how far is that? Yeah,
3 miles.
yeah.
You know,
Oh, so it's just 3 miles. It's not kilometers.
no, it's miles over here, mate.
So they know 3 miles is pretty long.
Yeah, it's bigger than anything over here. The only thing that's got that kind of length would be the Kilcardy Links Fair, but that's literally just one road. That doesn't spread out widthwise. That's just lengthwise. And I don't know how wide it would be. It's 3 miles by probably 3 miles by 3 miles. It's probably one big square, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's about what the state fair is too, 3 by 3, but that's 12 square miles.
Yeah, and that gives everybody who's listening, that gives you an idea of how big that thing is. It's like I said earlier, I cannot describe how big it is. And I went to it, and I think we did 3 days there, and literally we scratched the surface. It's immense. The next question is also from Connor, and his question is: if you had to take one European traveling coaster and have it travel to the States, which one would it be?
Is that really a question? Connor,
That's what he asked. I know what the answer is, but
everybody
that's the
knows
question.
the answer to that.
So do I, but do you want me to say it, or do you want to go ahead and say
Come on, we all got to have an Olympic looping over in the States.
it?
Now, at one time, before that amusement company from New Jersey came in the United States, we did have a single looping coaster at the state fair one time,
Yeah,
and that was a hit.
Munich looping is a hit. It is over here. Like, I mean, they charge a fortune for it, yet it's always full. Literally always.
Well, because you don't get hardly anything like that even at an amusement park.
No, you don't. You really don't. That's such an original ride. You don't get it anywhere. But yeah, that was Connor's question. So there you go,
But
Connor.
but the big thing about that is, to an everyday person, they see that as just a roller coaster.
No,
To us people that are really geeky people, we look at the way that it's built, designed,
travels,
construction. We look at
everything.
it all,
Yeah,
you know.
even down to seeing it being stored over in Germany.
Yeah.
It is.
I mean, if you ask the normal person, oh, well, how do you think this thing gets over here? If you had to guess how many trailers? Oh, I think it's like 3 or 4 trailers.
Try 40.
No, it's 40s.
You know,
But they don't know that.
no, that I think that's the difference between your enthusiasts and the general public. You know, the general public just want to ride it, whereas we're, like you say, nerdy enough to want to know everything inside and out. Connor's next question is: what is the largest state fair in the US?
I'm thinking, if I remember correctly, you can do a Google search in it, and it'll tell you the largest state fairs in the country.
See, I'm sure I
I
asked.
know,
I'm sure I asked this question
I
in one of my
know
quizzes.
Minnesota's really big. I know California is really big. I think the biggest is the State Fair of Texas, which
Well,
is
no,
humongous.
you was right first time.
What's that?
Minnesota.
Is it the biggest?
It depends how you judge as the biggest. Minnesota is the biggest by attendance.
Yeah,
Uh,
by
by
attendance, which that's what they usually do, not by square like
yeah,
miles or whatever.
by attendance,
Minnesota's usually the
Minnesota
largest.
is the biggest, um, and Iowa is the second biggest, which
Yep,
surprises
that
me.
that's right after the Ohio State Fair.
So I hope that's answered your question, Connor. Well, it did. The next question is from Daz from Trips with Daz,
What's
and
up,
his
Daz?
and his question is: what are your top 5 bucket list rides?
I'm going to say that right now, I don't really have a bucket list because I've really gone on a lot of the ones that I like. And as I get older, yes, I am 50, I got to stick that Dramamine patch behind my ear so I don't get sick. One of my big bucket list things is to get Dave on Hangover. I got to sit next to him. I got to give him a ribbon. I got to give him the shit and make him just swear his ass off. That'll be so
Yeah.
much fun.
Well,
Um,
I got I've got chain ganged in one of my live streams now that I've got to go on it this year as well. So
well, if we all get to Winter Wonderland, we'll all get on one and let that guy harass the crap out of us, and we'll have fun.
and I don't know. I'll have to go to the Bavarian village first.
Yeah, no shit. Um,
Yeah.
and I think some of the rides that I saw over at Winter Wonderland, I would like that virtual reality spook house or ghost fun house,
Oh, yeah. I
Doctor
can't.
something.
Doctor, was it Doctor something
You
something?
know,
I know
with
the one you're about.
with the hanging track, almost like a suspension roller coaster. That would be cool.
No, that ride's
Uh,
awful. The Eurocoaster.
yeah. Well, but you know what? For somebody like me though, that never will ever get to experience anything like that in the States, anything like that is amazing.
Yeah, Doctor Archibald's Master of Time.
Yeah, that just looks amazing.
It is a really good ride, and so is the Ghost House there. The new Ghost House is really good. But there's amazing rides at Winter Wonderland. Atmosphere should be there. That's an amazing ride. Um,
Now, I just can't do a lot of those rides anymore, like the swinging, spinning, like a waltzer. Forget it. I'm done.
well,
I'd puke.
they've got one of
I'd
the
puke.
biggest they've got one of the biggest boosters in the world there as well.
Can't do
Storm,
it. I get sick on it.
you'll be fine, trust me.
I'm I'm a puss.
Yeah, we'll get you on it.
All right.
Um, so that hasn't answered your question, Daz, but he'll answer it at Christmas when he goes on them. There you go.
Yep.
Uh,
We'll save it for when we go there.
the next question is from Simon from Slothy Vlogs. Hello,
What's
Simon.
up? 2 tokens.
Two tokens, you slags. Um, his question is, why don't the US have pay boxes? He says, I know they don't take money at the rides, but pay boxes look so much smarter.
We do have pay boxes, but they're used more for the operation of the ride instead of the money. We did kind of cover that earlier because when you have a show owner, and I've noticed like in the vlogs with Dave, they go to a central area and they buy tokens, and that's where that whole 2 tokens things comes on because you go to a central pay box, you buy your tokens, and you go. And this is one thing that still amazes me how they put tokens in rides in England. You don't do that here.
Um,
That
that's only really the bumper cars, the Dodgems.
well, yeah, but I mean, I've seen it on some of the like say a ride like the New York style. I've seen that, and the frog jump I think had it one time.
No, New
But see,
York, you just pay at the cab. You pay at the
uh,
pay box and walk on.
but to answer the question, is because when you go and you buy your wristband, they do it in one central location or many little ticket boxes around the fairgrounds, because the same guy owns all the rides that are there.
There you go, Simon. I hope that's answered your question. And I think that's pretty much winds up the end of the second part of the podcast. Personally, from me, thank you for coming on, Tom. I really appreciate it. For all those listening, please go over and check out Tom's new YouTube channel, which is Trips with Tom and Jasmine. Keep checking out his Facebook group, which is fantastic, and putting your photos on there. And from me, just like to say thanks, Tom. Thanks for being
All right,
on.
Craig. Thanks, buddy.
And thanks to everybody who's listening. And we'll see you again on the next podcast. So goodbye, everybody, and stay safe.
Cheers.
Bye.